What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Real Raw Truth podcast. It has been a minute. Holy crap. I feel like we haven't talked in like a month, but I don't think it's been quite that long. It just has been a really busy couple weeks with all of us. I mean, I competed, so we took a couple weeks off. And then I got COVID, so that wasn't very fun, like right after coming back. So we've been off a little bit, but I'm excited to be back with you guys and chat. We have all really good topic today. My friend Amanda has joined us, and we're going to talk about her post-show reverse or lack thereof, and her method of what she's been doing and why it's worked so well for her. But I guess to like catch everybody up, can you guys just kind of like give the viewers a little overview of like what you guys have been up to the past month?
Well, I've been taking care of a little child called
That's right.
Blue.
You got your puppy.
You guys, he's one of the best, like, well-behaved dogs. He's so chill, but obviously he's still a puppy, so I still have a lot of work to do. It's keeping me, up to date and busy, but it's nice focusing on that, but focusing on my clients. I've been super busy with getting more clients. Trying to put more educational content out there as well. I've kind of changed that up, so that's kind of been like a big change for me. I know I've reached out to both of you guys, like, hey, help me. How do I get better content out there? Because I have quite a bit of knowledge as well, and I want to actually portray that versus just posting pictures just to post pictures.
Yeah.
So
I feel like the content part is so hard too for coaches, especially because it's like we need to give information, but not just like spout it off of like, here's some information on XYZ, because that's just boring. So it's like, how do you do it in a way that's like relatable, but still like can teach people something without being like, hey, listen to me, I have something to say.
right, and you want it to come off organic too, and like
Yeah.
that's my biggest struggle is like I'm very like just me. But it's like sometimes it's hard when there's a camera. It's like, okay, there's a camera. So now, like, how do I portray this information without it being, like you said, very
Yep.
scripted? So I'm
Yep.
like, I'm trying to figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. Jane, how about you?
Guys, very exciting news. So, Amanda, you don't know this about me yet, but I live in Chicago and I have not had a car in 10 years. I bought a car.
Oh my
What did you
God.
buy?
I was responsible because I do park in a parking garage. It is a 2021 Volvo XC60. I don't know what the model is. It's really cute. And I was
Those
like,
are nice cars though.
yeah, really good car. So I went to go test drive something else, and that car was sitting on the lot. And I was like, let me just go take a look. And it was within my price range. And I was like, you know what? 2 years old. I didn't want brand new. That would have been stupid. It's going to get a scratch or something on it, in the city.
Something always happens.
Yeah, I marched myself right on into the dealership. I left with a car. I think these guys thought I was nuts. I loved it. It was like, I felt really accomplished. So I just
They're
did
probably like, where are more of you? Can you just
what?
send a bunch of people like you over here? Because they just want a quick, easy deal.
Yeah.
I said, listen, I have not driven a car like regularly for 10 years. I haven't owned a car for 10 years. So be nice to me. Like, I'm not playing around here, fellas. And I had the nicest salesman. And so I didn't get screwed over or anything. But anyway, got to deal with those guys. That was really exciting. And then I'm also in prep. So I'm about 8 weeks out. Gosh, really like 7.5 weeks out for my first NPC show. I'm so scared. I
I'm so
know.
pumped for you.
No, you're gonna do so good. It's always scary going back. I feel like your first show back, even if you just took like a 6-month break, like it's always so scary. Like it's that feeling where you're like, ooh, the unknown. But then once you get back on stage, you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot like why I love this so much.
Yep.
Yeah. And you know what? I feel really good. I mean, I'm learning the posing and it's different. I've always competed naturally, and man, I've got my pro card in 2 natural leagues, but NPC is a little different. Just it's still the stage. It's still you got to do all of the things. None of that's different. It's just a little bit posing tweaks and whatnot. But besides that, I feel pretty darn good. I mean, this is the best I've been this far out ever in my entire 8 years of competing. So I'm feeling good.
Congratulations.
And
That's
what
killer.
does that say about health? So optimal health before competing.
Yeah, I had to fix some things for the past 3 years, but we're good now.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we've all been in that boat. So even Amanda. So yeah, having to fix some stuff. So competing naturally isn't always the best thing for you. So just FYI, people.
Yeah, no, I would, no.
It can actually honestly fuck you up even more.
Hell no. Yeah, no.
But
I'm a compete. My very first prep, I did the most intense thing I took was caffeine. Like it was, and I looked like it. Yeah. I mean,
I
I was,
remember I used to take like those Project AD like fat burners, and they were like so strong, and it would like get you to like I would like start to sweat, and I had to like go sit down to get like the cold sweats, and be like, I'm like, I can't do this. Like you feel a little sick, and I'd be like, yeah,
Just
this is
fat
bad.
burners in general. I remember taking so many, and like the natural fat burners, right?
Oh,
I feel
yeah.
like those actually make you more sick, and like I almost felt like I was gonna throw up every single time. I'm like, I just
Yep.
have to take this. I just have to take this. I'm like, ugh.
Mhm.
Yep.
yeah, it's
That was
brutal.
me. We were
So I guess I gave you guys a little bit of background on like what I had going on. So I competed, which we'll talk about that in another episode because that's a whole thing in and of itself, and I don't really want to talk about that right now.
That'll be a good episode.
Yeah, we're gonna make it. We'll do it after my next show. Because I'm about a week and a half out now. For my next show. And this
Where are
one's
you guys both competing? So everybody knows.
my show is in Bloomington, Illinois.
and then
Oh,
mine is gonna be in St. Petersburg, Florida, which I'll see Sammy there.
That's amazing.
yay! I'll be there.
So I competed. I came back from Texas, got COVID that week, so that was fun. But bright side is that I'm down like 6 pounds from stage weight. So in like 2.5 weeks, I've dropped like 6 pounds, which is awesome.
Wow.
During that time, I also drove to Montana last week for my friend's wedding that I was in. And that was so much fun. I really wish I could have stayed longer, but I'm definitely going back out there because it is fucking gorgeous. I love Montana so much, and it makes me so excited to move to Denver with Amanda. Amanda lives in Denver.
Oh, are you guys both moving there? Are you moving in with her?
No, she's married.
You're like, I think I need my own place.
Yes.
I mean, my
I just
husband
crashed on her
loves
couch.
we've adopted her, so
Yes.
it would probably be fine. We would just need to get a bigger place.
Yeah, I just crash on the couch, like, but yeah, I'm pretty much like if I go there, I stay with them. But yeah, so I'm moving there next year. But anyways, so yeah, so I'm just about a week and a half out, very low food, lots of cardio, all the things right now. Feel like
What's your macros at in cardio? We're just curious.
oh, talk about protein veggie days for like 3-4 days in a row, and then I get a refeed if I hit a low weight.
Oh,
So
snap.
and then 2 hours of cardio a day, training 5 days a week. So we are in the grind right now. So
It's what it takes. People. It's what it takes. People want to post about the people that are 300 carbs, and guess what? It ain't it.
Yep, exactly. So, which
Especially
brings me
at the
over
pro
to
level.
Amanda. Now that we've gotten our introductions done, so this is for all the listeners here. This is my friend Amanda. She is a national level bikini competitor. She's also a coach. She's done plenty of competitions, and she just competed this year at USA's. Was her last show that she did, and she's taken a very different approach to her reversing, and like I said, lack thereof. Just like the way that she's documented it and talked about it, and I've talked to her a lot about it because like we talk all, like every day. And I just thought it would be really, really cool to have her on and have a different perspective on a way to look at food and a way to reverse and stuff. And so she's going to kind of tell us about that. So I guess tell the listeners a little bit about you first.
So I've been competing in weight training for probably about 5 years now. So in the grand scheme of bikini, not very long. I'm old when it comes to bikini. I'm in my mid 30s. I didn't even know bodybuilding existed until 5 years ago. I know, girl, like for bikini, these girls are in their young 20s. I'm like, shit.
Terrifying.
Some of the best ones are actually older.
I know. I looked at Angelica and like Camille, and I'm like,
Yeah.
You're like, there's hope.
I have a chance. I know. I wish I even knew this existed years ago, but anyway, I've so basically as a bikini competitor, I do well regionally. I just have really shitty glutes. So that's always the rest of me is there, but that's, isn't that all of us? We're always just trying to get bigger glutes. So bodybuilding, ever since I found it, has become pretty much like the day I got under a barbell, I was like, this is my life now. Like the training in particular was what I always was looking for. I just didn't even knew, I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to go into a gym and even train. And once I found it, I was like, every minute of every day is spent learning and thinking about it just because I love it. And after doing my first show and doing off seasons and doing another season, I started to kind of, and listening to all these other competitors, pros, amateurs talk about the struggle with the post-show food situation. It was kind of like, okay, this is obviously a common issue. Everyone's starving post-show. Everyone's trying to stay lean, which, you know, I get it, whether we want to or not. You know, everyone wants to maintain some semblance of the physique they work so hard to build for their prep. And I was like, there's got to be a reason that there's got to be something else besides when coaches say like, oh, you just need to stick to your reverse, you need to have more discipline. I'm like, it's just not. And I noticed that girls that stayed leaner in their off season, unless they were already, their physique was already where it needed to be, they would look the same year after year. But then there's obviously the other end of the spectrum where people gain 50 pounds and you don't want to do that either, right? So for the last few years, I've just realized that with everything I've learned about the human body, the psychology behind food, even just evolutionarily, I was like, reverse dieting is kind of stupid. Like literally the only purpose of it is just to kind of maintain a lean physique, just so mentally you feel better about it. I've heard a lot of coaches over the years say that, you know, like if you gain weight faster, it's all going to come back. You're going to displace it differently. You're going to gain way more weight, blah, blah, blah. And you're just going to feel like shit. And I was just like, you know, obviously if you go out and just, you know, eat pizza and burgers all day, that's not the ideal. But to be honest, I found that the scarcity mindset surrounding food is what the problem was, not necessarily just the prep. And you can mentally, like literally, this is not just what my opinion and what I think about it. This is like known science that if you believe food to be scarce in your mind, which in a prep, that's what you're doing. It's a slow strategic starvation. As you eat again, you will retain more body fat because your brain thinks we're in a famine. So it's actually your fatigue is going to get worse. The gut issues, the hormone issues, it's all stemming from this scarcity famine mindset that we impose on ourselves. And the longer you stay in it, the worse it gets, which is why people try to stay lean. They go to prep again. The weight doesn't come off as easily because your body's like, well, we've been in a famine for a year. I'm going to hold on to every little bit of body fat I can. And your body's really smart. Like people try to trick it. You can't trick it. There are some people, yes, there are genetic outliers that can just sit really lean. I'm not talking about them. Great for them. I'm talking about the rest of us.
Not me.
And once I got out of my show, I was just like, I literally get to the same off-season weight every time, whether I do it fast, whether I do it slow. I reversed very slow 2 years ago. I stayed lean for a long time. I still got to about 165, 170. Once I finally stopped tracking and stopped trying to starve myself, even if it was a little bit, the weight came on and it stayed right there. Same thing this time. I was like, you know what? As much as I love dieting for longer, I'm just going to eat when I'm hungry, and I'm going to feed my body foods that I enjoy, and foods that are going to fuel my training. So for me, that looks like a lot of whole foods, but yeah, I would have muffins here and there. I'd have a cookie here and there. Sometimes 4 days in a row, I'd have cookies. And my weight literally got to the same place. It does every time. And my appetite went way down once I got there. My body was like, okay, we're at our set point. We're good now. But I do understand that there's a lot of mental that goes into that. Like not everybody can handle the weight coming on that fast. But for how shitty I feel when I'm lean, I was like, I don't care.
I think it goes to show, like, you know, per person, like what they want too. Like, you know, how you mentioned, like you feel really, really shitty when you're that lean. And for some people mentally, like I know, especially new competitors, like they can't handle like seeing themselves get bigger because they, you know, people see themselves at this new level that they've never seen themselves at before. And they're like, oh my gosh, I like need to maintain this. And like, I think we've all been there. Like, I know I've been there. I reversed way too slow one time. And then I only went up to like 1,600 calories because I didn't know better, because I was like, oh, I'm a small person. I don't really need that much food. And like, I did because I was training 6 days a week and doing powerlifting, and I still did, but I didn't know any better. And I also stayed too lean for too long, and that was detrimental because I didn't really make that much progress. But I wanted to see that leaner look, and then like this last off season, I got up to that like 135-ish mark, and I was like, cool, I'm feeling good, and like food was not a focus anymore because food becomes a focus for everyone at some point during prep. Like I think we've all been there too, where you wake up in the middle of the night and you just scroll through Pinterest looking at recipes, or through Instagram food pages. Like my whole Instagram right now is food pages. Like it is what it is. I'm eating protein and vegetables, and yes, I want some chocolate cake, like real bad, but I don't think I have an eating disorder by any means. Like, so Amanda, talk about that, like, because you've always put a good um explanation as to like the whole eating disorder thing, because lots of people are very afraid of prepping because they're like, oh, I don't want to get an eating disorder. It's like,
Oh
well,
yeah.
if you tell yourself you're going to get an eating disorder, like you're going to get an eating disorder. Like it's how your brain works, like self-fulfilling prophecy. So
Yep.
touch on that a little bit about like the whole like eating disorder thing.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I even have clients or even friends who are pros, and it's like they're scared to even eat after the show, like pros,
Yeah.
and they don't want to gain weight. They don't want to, do all this stuff. And it's like, where do you find that balance between, you know?
I will tell you, because this is a really important topic for me. Because, and I've said this before, as much knowledge as so many bodybuilding coaches have, and they have a better understanding of the human body than a lot of even doctors do sometimes. For whatever reason, this whole how your brain works with food, why this is not understood, I don't fully know. And maybe it is by some people. They're just not people that are like shouting it from the rooftops. But when you are using food as an emotional coping mechanism, like that's something that was there before you prepped, before you bodybuilding, doesn't matter what weight you're at, what your composition is. If food is strictly for an emotional coping mechanism, yes, that is possible. That could then be an eating disorder, which obviously I'm not a therapist. That's not something that I say, oh, I can help someone with, right? If someone has a great relationship with food, just like normal relationship with food, they go compete, get into bodybuilding for whether it's one prep or multiple, and now they have this insane food focus, the binge restrict cycle. That's not an eating disorder. That's you being in a famine for years. Your brain is going to do everything humanly possible to get you to eat food. It's going to make tree bark look appetizing to get you to eat food. It doesn't matter what it is. And it drives me crazy when a lot of coaches will put this accountability on their clients. Like, you just need to be more disciplined. You need to do what's hard. And I've had pros DM me about this. And they're like, oh, I just get told that like, someone out there is doing the hard shit. You need to do the hard shit, like when they're reversing. And it doesn't mean that we're not going to all restrict and go into prep. We all love this sport. We're going to do it. But when people are harnessed with the information as to why what's happening is happening, it releases you from the anxiety and the stress that there's something wrong with you. Like, why am I so food focused? Why? Because girl, you are at way under your body fat set point. Until you get back there, your body is going to do everything to get the weight back on. That's what it's supposed to do. If you think of like remove bodybuilding evolutionarily, if there's a famine, which is what I'm calling a prep, I just keep using that word because this is literally why these mechanisms are in place in your body. Your body is going to get very efficient at holding on to body fat because when it happens again, it wants to conserve as much as possible. It's going to slow down your energy. Your cycle is going to go away. All your systems in your body that are not there, that are not needed for survival, are going to go away. 1 ounce of muscle has more calories than an ounce of body fat. Your body's going to eat that first too. So you stay there for too long, you can't gain muscle, you start losing it, if anything, which is why that happens at a prep. We know it, we try to mitigate it, but it's going to happen a little. And no one ever gets back to their set point, ever, hardly. And then they're wondering why all these like gut issues and hormonal issues are happening. That is why. It's stress, it's lifestyle, but it's because no one allows themselves to eat anymore. And I think a lot of like the DMs I've gotten, they're like, oh my God, I thought I had an eating disorder because of bodybuilding. I'm like, no, girl, you're just hungry. Like,
I think a
And
lot
it's
of people,
interesting.
go ahead, Sammy.
Sorry, it's interesting that you say, that I feel like so during prep, you're just so focused. So, you're just so focused, you're following macros, everything like that. But then after prep, it's like your mind is just going crazy because, like you said, you're in the starvation mode. So it's like you feel like you kind of like, it's like tug of war. It's like you want to stay lean, but then you also want to eat food because you're hungry. So it's like, just like you said, I think it is more so all in the mind, more so than like what's going on. Because I mean, there's been times where you can prep show after show after show and your body's fine. So, but it's because your mindset, right? Is that kind of like what you're saying?
yeah, in a way, for sure. And mindset is everything. But when in regards to this, there's actually a cellular response to, it's almost like when you see something dangerous, you get that adrenaline rush, all of these mechanisms get into place to get you to be safe, right? You can sprint, you get your strength is better because your body is responding to what the information your mind's taking in. It's the same thing. So like I have a client, for example, who has never competed before. She wants to. She's only 19. She's got years to go to build. She's in no rush. She was eating plenty of food, but had all these cravings and was starving, right? So when she came to me and I was like, let's do this. This is a structure of a meal plan. If you're hungry outside of this, I want you to eat like 3 or 4 meals a week. Just have whatever you want, literally whatever you want. I don't care. She was like a cookie. I'm like, yeah, like a cookie, like no food is off limits, no rules, nothing. Her hunger, literally her appetite within like a week and a half went away and she dropped like 5 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Because once food was no longer scarce, her body was like, oh, okay, we're fine. And I'm not saying it's going to happen every single time,
Right.
but once food no longer was scarce, whether it's self-imposed or environmentally imposed, her body relaxed and it was like, oh, okay. And she no longer craved food because I gave her permission to have it. If that makes
That's
sense.
really interesting that you say that because I feel like I've been in that situation before, even like with working with Jason, he automatically bumped up my calories crazy high. And I was like already like at like an unhealthy weight, everything like that. And I'm like, you want me to eat more food? Because I was always in, just like you said, that restriction eating. So it was like I would always restrict because I was trying to hit these macros. And I would get so pissed at myself that I'm not hitting these macros. I'm like, so it would honestly just cause more stress every single day. And then the stress would cause me to eat extra over my macros, even though it was healthy foods, right? I was just constantly stressed. And like you said, like kind of like the fight or flight mode and the mechanisms, it makes sense now because when I finally just like let go of all of that, and even just like stress in general, like when you're stressing about just something, you're causing yourself more anxiety, all this stuff going on. Like it's crazy. This actually happened to me like a couple weeks ago, just stress. And I was just bloated like crazy. And Jason's just like, Sam, you're stressed. You need to calm down. I'm like, I don't even know why I'm stressed. And so I like finally just like
stressful.
I'm like, I was stressing about posting on Instagram. So stupid. And so like it literally caused like so much inflammation in my gut. So I finally was like, oh my God, why am I stressing about this? So I finally chilled out. And literally the next week, my bloat was gone. Like I felt fine. I'm like, wow, this is crazy that it's all like a lot of it is in the mind and the stress and everything like that. So, even just about food and the relationship with food. And I really like how you also mentioned that it's not that they have an eating disorder after prep, because I've had a lot of clients that have mentioned that to me as well. They're like, wow, like I love prep, but I think it caused my eating disorder. I'm like, no, either one, you had a bad relationship with food prior to prepping, or two, it's exactly what you're saying. They have a scarcity mindset now because they were in prep for so long. But now, so how do you tell somebody who has like that going on, like a client, or they think they have an eating disorder after prep, like how do you try to not necessarily convince them that they have a scarcity mindset, but how do you talk to them and kind of guide them through that?
Yeah. So I explained to them everything I just explained to you guys so that they have the knowledge, understanding of what's happening in their bodies. And then that stress of like, I have an emotional problem with therapy kind of goes away. They're like, you can see the relief. They're like, oh, okay. Because I'm like, look, there's 3 things we need to survive: food, water, and oxygen. You think your body's not going to try to fuck you up when you try to tell it can't have any food? Like, that's how it lives. Like, you'd be very like, that's why, we're so in a bubble of bodybuilding that we kind of forget that this is like, it's an amazing thing, but it's a very unnatural thing we're asking our bodies to do, like very not normal. And you don't think it's going to fight you. Like, of course it's going to fight you. It doesn't know it's just for fun to get up on stage in a glittery bikini. It doesn't know that. So I tell them, like, look, this is what's happening. And then I'm very direct in that, yeah, you're going to gain weight. And I don't know how much, but you either deal with this now or you deal with it later.
Yeah.
So the only thing that like worries me is like gaining the fat, right? So like obviously gaining weight after a show is normal. And I get we have to gain some body fat as well because we're so lean. But like that part I think is the scary part for me, for other competitors, for athletes. And like that's where I think, how do you find that like balance? Would like, I don't know. I think like for me personally, I love where you're coming from. And I think that maybe having like guidelines maybe would be like beneficial. So like still maybe not saying like, okay, you have to hit these macros 7 days a week. Maybe like you said, like, here's your macros. Let's start off with here. Obviously you bump them up after competition prep. But then you give them maybe like 2 or 3 free meals to start with, but maybe you also have a little bit of guidelines, like maybe not like having cookies and stuff like that post show, because, like when your body is super sensitive after competing, like if I were to just like, if my coach were to be like, oh, you can have cookies, you can have whatever, I'd be like, okay, cool. So then I'd probably go the opposite way where I would like have all this extra stuff. Obviously me knowing what I know, I wouldn't, but like if I were a new competitor and stuff like that.
For sure.
I think that's where the individual portion comes in and like what each person can handle, because a new competitor versus like someone who's seasoned like any of us is going to be treated way differently. Like I would not do like for like a new competitor for my like a client of mine. Like I have a girl who has had eating disorder history. And so we do have some guidelines in place because eating disorders are all about control. And so if there is no control, that's when they go wild. And then because it's that the rules around food that people are making up for themselves or other people have told them about, like, oh, this is bad, or oh, you can only have a free meal on this day. I've kind of told her, I've been like, okay, like, hey, if you want to go out for coffee and have like a fancy coffee on like a Wednesday with a friend, do it on Wednesday. Just don't have one on Saturday then, cool. Or if like you have your free meal on Saturday, like, pick from these options. And then like this last week, she's like, I tried somewhere new and I had 2 servings of fries, a burger with mozzarella sticks on it, and some nachos. And now I feel really bad. And I was like, well, you ate a lot of dairy and a lot of grease. So are you going to do that again? And she was like, oh yeah, that's probably a good idea. And I was like,
well, there's still, Amanda, you said this in the beginning, there's still a health component to
sure.
Yeah.
Like, you're a seasoned competitor, you get it, you've done the ups and downs. We all have on, on this podcast as well. Like, I'm cool probably gaining 20 pounds after a show because I know that that's where my body feels good. And I also still look muscular. Like, I'm not just like, I didn't just like lose it all, right? I don't know when that's going to come back. We can talk about that after, but I think that there's a health component to this too. Sammy, that stress shows up in your gut. A lot of people do. It doesn't typically for me, but my adrenals are going to tank first, right? So like, I know going into a prep and out of a prep, specifically what I need to focus on to make sure that doesn't happen. So Sammy, you who does not respond well to certain foods very specifically throughout the year, right? You're still working on that. If you were to go into a prep, you probably got to be a little strategic afterwards. And I think, Amanda, what you're saying is like, listen, I'm still being strategic. I'm not being a complete asshole, but like, I'm also not just restricting so much that now all I'm focused on is food. And then that makes it worse. And then that also causes a stressor inside of your body, whether you want it to or not.
Exactly. And just to be clear, like the girl I was mentioning with the cookies, she's not prepping and she's at a normal body weight. And for her, like, it's not going to, that's not, I would never tell someone like reversing out of a prep, just go have whatever. Like, that's not what I should have been more clear about that. She's someone that's at like she could have 3 cheat meals and her weight's not going to change just because she's
okay. I have a couple clients like that too, or I should tell them the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm like, dude, like you've been at the same weight because we're just growing. I'm like, you've been around the same weight for months. Even when she goes on a week-long vacation, her weight changes like a pound or 2. And so she was restricting when she didn't. I was like, dude, like your weight doesn't, you're not super sensitive with that in a prep. Now, reversing out of a prep, I do implement guidelines, absolutely. And I try to educate them on the way to structure a meal so that you do get satiation, like protein, fiber, fats, carbs, how to do that. But at the same time, the more you restrict something, the more you are going to want it, which is why America, just for like a big zoom out example, we're the most diet focused country there is. And we're also the fattest country that there is. Like, why do you think that countries like France, Italy, and Spain, which are literally the land of bread, cheese, and wine and dairy, obesity is way less of an occurring over there? You know, like they're eating all the stuff that we're terrified of constantly because they don't restrict it and they don't feel the need to overeat. And my point is, when you remove the restriction away, you may overeat for a little bit, like for a few days, but then you're not going to anymore. You're not going to go for those things. It's like a resort mentality. Like when you go on vacation, you've eaten like shit for 3 days. You're like, I really want a salad right now.
I was gonna say that reminds me when I get back from vacation, you know, if I've gone home and then I'm like, I can't do that anymore. Like I feel like crap.
Exactly.
Are you taking labs at this point? Like, are you doing your blood work?
Yep. So I do. I didn't do it right after the show because that would not be good.
Yeah.
Never do it directly after a show.
No,
wait
I'm
a
like,
few weeks.
I know that's going to look terrible. So I actually did just run lab work actually last week. I had some markers tested. I am trying to get pregnant. So there were some other things I was looking at. And everything's improving really well. But I mean, I got my period back 3 weeks after my show and I was conditioned. Like,
can you kind of explain, can you like kind of walk us through like what you did after your show? So like, did you have a cheat meal? And then how did like I guess the 3 weeks look like following the show? Like, I know you said you kind of intuitively ate, but like how did that look? Did you have sweets? Did you have anything like that? So like, that's my other struggle, like where I struggle with like telling clients what to do. Cause like you said, like if you have too many guidelines, then that's going to be too restrictive, right? And then they're going to have that scarcity mindset. So that's good for me to take note on as well. But like, so obviously you want to, I try to stay away from sugar and alcohol. Those are the two worst things after competition prep. So like, but where do you kind of say like, you can have some, but then sometimes people take some and then, you know, the dopamine response comes and then they want more. And then it's like a drug at that point. So it's like, where do you?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, and a lot of people don't go down this line long enough to see this happen. Those cravings will go away. They will go away. Like it's very, like I said, I'm not talking about people that with legitimate eating disorders or anything like that. I'm talking about just competitors in general. It's pretty, like, I would be pretty surprised if after a week of eating like shit, someone was still wanting to do that. It's really rare. Just like when you get, like, you drink way too much one night, you're like, I'm not drinking for a month. You're like, I am good. But most people won't let themselves get to that point to where they're like, they remove the restriction because they're way too afraid of the body fat gain, which I understand. I'm not dismissing that at all. And that's why I'm saying, like, not everyone has to do it the way I did it. I'm not saying this is the way to do it. I'm just saying the more you limit and restrict and say something's off limits, the more you will want it. And it will continue to be that way until the rules are gone. It's like telling a kid, don't touch a hot stove.
You know what, the more you say it, the more it like brings like a light bulb to me. But so it's like you said that, so basically like if I were to have sugar, and I think the reason why, like I'm trying to think back to like my preps that I like didn't reverse correctly. And and like, because once I had sugar, like I just couldn't stop. It was like one turned into 5, turned into 6. I wanted the whole jar of almond butter, whatever the case was. This is like way back in the day, by the way. I have not done that in a long time, but you know, so it's like but the thing is where it comes back to is like you do it and then you feel guilty about it and then you restrict so hard the next day because it's like that drinking situation, like you said. So maybe the next day, if you don't restrict and you just get right back on like eating normally and you just don't, like you have a little bit of almond butter here and there, like you just, again, it's like telling your mind that it's going to be okay and giving your body, like giving yourself grace and just moving forward. But I think like it is the whole restriction thing, because once you restrict, or do extra cardio and then you feel guilty. It's like that full vicious cycle.
For sure. And the thing is, and this is where it gets so hard for bodybuilders and myself, like, guys, every day I find myself trying to apply rules around food. I do it. I still do it. I catch it. But the difference is I catch it now. And Kayla knows about this moment that I had months ago. And I forget what it was, but I was sitting at a Starbucks. I was working and I had already been kind of doing this. I was working through it myself because, I was my own guinea pig with this. I was like, I'm not doing this reverse anymore. It just doesn't, I don't think it works from a health or mindset standpoint long-term. And these two girls or women came in on their lunch break. They had like a Tupperware of lunch. They looked like nurses or dental assistants or something. They both go to the front. They each ordered like a sugary looking drink. I saw like the caramel drizzle on it, whatever. And they each got like a pastry. And they sat there, they were just like slowly kind of eating it and drinking. They weren't like eating it fast, and they ate their meal and they left. And they both had like just normal, healthy compositions. They weren't overweight, they weren't underweight. And I literally was like, I wonder what it would be like to just be able to go into a Starbucks and order a sugary drink and a muffin and not feel like total shit about it. And then it hit me how sad that was.
You know what? That's actually crazy. I think, yeah. And I think a lot of people are going to resonate to this, especially if we all resonate to this. Cause I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, wow. Like,
because we'll eat it when we give ourselves permission. Like, oh, like let's say your cheat meal day is Saturday. Like Saturday, I used to do it. Saturday, I have my Starbucks and my muffin, and then I have my cheat meal. So when you give yourself permission, it's okay. But all the other time, it's not okay. So what happens on Saturday? You're like, I could eat 20 of these muffins because you've restricted it all the other days. And when I thought that, I was like, that is so sad that I can't even trust myself to enjoy a caramel macchiato and a blueberry muffin without hating myself afterwards. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? Sorry for cussing, but
we've been cussing the whole show.
A lot of that is like, that is such mindset work though, right? Like in general for life. Because I always say, thoughts lead to feelings, lead to actions, lead to results. It's the exact same thing in this scenario. What is my thought? Well, if I have a caramel macchiato and a blueberry muffin, I'm going to get fat. I'm going to gain body fat. I'm going to feel like shit, whatever it is. So then that leads to a feeling, well, I can't do that. That's bad. That's wrong. That doesn't feel right. And then what's the result? Exactly what we just said. So when you reframe that in your brain, like, oh no, I can have that. I can have that when I want to have that. That's no problem, right? We make choices, obviously, because of a lifestyle that we live in general of health, that we don't do that every day. But to your point is that you have the option to, and it's okay. And it doesn't have to be on Saturday at 10 a.m. because that's when I get my free meal.
Exactly. And I think what's hard is that a lot of times coaches will frame it like, you can choose it, but if you want your goals, you better do this. And then it still feels like a self-imposed prison.
Yeah.
And it is. It's 100% a self-imposed prison. And people, you can just see by how many people go off their diet or binge or whatever it is. Like, it's a lot of people, and why so many Americans are obese, and yet we diet more than any other country on the planet.
Right.
It's this constant cycle of binge, restrict, and maybe not binge like full on, but you know what I mean? Like overeat, restrict, overeat, restrict. And it's the restriction that's the problem. Most people are just not going to eat like that more than a few days or a week. I guarantee it. If you give someone permission, like, look, I want you to have 4 meals with protein, carbs, and fat, fiber. You're going to have 25, 35 grams of fiber, whatever it is. Now, outside of that, you don't have rules and restrictions. And that's what I did to answer your question, Sammy. I never answered your question about how I handled those 3 weeks. That's exactly what I did. And I told my husband, I said, no matter how upset I get, because I still have my moments, like I'm very comfortable more than most being heavier in my off season. I kind of like it, to be honest. I don't like being lean very much, actually. I feel like a bag of remotes. But so I feel more confident, but it doesn't mean I don't have my moments where I'm like, fuck, I worked for 6 months to look like this, and it's just like melting away within a matter of days. Like, yes, I'm a human. And I told my husband, like, do not let me stop this. And After the show, I said, you know what, Saturday night, all of Sunday, I'm having whatever I want. And I did. I literally did. I think I gained 10 or 12 pounds in the day and a half. Some of that came off after that. And when I got home, I said, I'm going to have my normal meals but I did not measure or weigh out anything. And my goal was, I'm going to get as many micronutrients as possible. Cause like I said, like I'm trying to start a family now too. And I want to make sure I'm nourishing my body with variety, fruits, vegetables, good proteins. Like, and I love that kind of food. We all do. But if I have like a gnarly craving that's coming on to the point where I'm like, I'm thinking about it, I'm just going to have the damn thing. I'm going to have the bagel and cream cheese. I'm going to have the muffin. And to be honest, I kind of got to a weight and I would stay there for like a couple weeks and then my weight would bump up a bit. And I've been pretty much back up at 165 for like over a month. And I crave literally nothing. If anything, sometimes food grosses me out. Like,
Wow.
It's the first time in 5 years I've had no food focus, zero food focus. Like I can actually operate in my day and allocate that energy to work, to clients, to anything else. Cause I remember I was like on the couch with my husband, I was just crying. I was like, I am so exhausted from being hungry for years. I'm so tired. Like it's in my brain all the time, thinking about it. Even when my weight was come up post show, I was still restricting and had those rules. Like I can only have this on this day. And I only have 40 carbs left. Shit, I got to make that go a long way. I'm going to add way more vegetables. I'm going to volume eat. I'm going to do this. And it never solved the problem. It wasn't until I took the rules away that the problem actually went away. And I've never felt more free to just operate in my life. And like I said, like you guys said, we've been doing this for a long time. I know how to eat enough protein and do all of that, but it was not until I took those rules away. And I'm actually lighter than I was last off season when I was macro counting.
You know, that's kind of crazy too that you brought that up so I went through a whole process with Jason recently and it wasn't a prep by any means, but it actually was kind of harder than a prep, right, Kayla and Jane? It was weight loss resistance.
Yeah, you were going through it, man.
Yeah, it was pretty tough. And especially like coming from a background where I felt like I was very restricted and stuff too. I got to a point where it was towards the end where I told Jason, like, look, I'm starting to get food restrictions again. Like, I don't like this. So we started reversing up. And I was following macros up until, so I started taking out my semaglutide. And as you know, semaglutide, makes your appetite suppressant go away. But as you start lowering it, your appetite comes back. And so as my appetite came back, I honestly I haven't even told anybody really this, but like, I honestly wasn't, I was tracking, but not tracking, kind of like what you were doing, Amanda. And I was keeping it to whole clean foods. If I wanted to go out to Pura Vida, I went out to Pura Vida, got a salmon bowl. If I went to like, Vida. Me too. Oh yeah, we went there.
We went there like twice.
in one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's just like, and then like, if my friends wanted to go get lunch or go get a coffee, like I would just do it. And like, I haven't really been tracking, and I'm finally just getting back to tracking. And it's been like probably like 3 months. And I even I've traveled, and I honestly have just like, I wasn't fully tracking. And to me, like at first I felt like, oh my God, I'm doing something wrong. And every check-in I had with Jason, I'm like, I haven't really been 100% and I feel so guilty. I just kept telling him I feel so guilty. I'm not being 100%. Like, I was like, I know I can do better. And I was like, I promise next week I'll be 100%. And I'm still at this point, you guys, where I'm still telling him that in my check-ins. But it's crazy is finally, like, when I kind of like let go of like the thoughts and the, of the restriction, I'm like, you know what? Like, cause I would see my check-ins and I'm like, wow, I actually don't, like, in my mind, I feel like my check-in's going to be so shitty. And then I look at my check and I'm like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Like, I'm not even being like, I'm not restricting. I'm not even really necessarily following macros 100%, which is crazy to me because I'm like, you know what I mean? So I just kind of put a different perspective in my mind too. And now here I am, like finally, being closer to 100, but it's like, you don't have to be 100%, especially in your off season. Now competition prep is different. Yeah. But in your off season and reversing, I've never done it. Like, well, I guess I technically did do a reverse that way kind of too. So
I definitely don't think you should be either like 100% like nailing your diet like following it to a T in your off season anyways, because you just get burnt out. Like that is something that I'm looking forward to doing when I'm done with prep is like, and I told Amanda this before, like we've talked a lot about prepping and stuff like that. Like I talk to her every day. But like I'm just like tired of tracking and weighing everything. And I'm just like, and I genuinely like my food. Like the question I hate the most is when people are like, so when do you get to eat normal again? And I was like,
Like I am.
I'm like, I mean, I'm gonna just eat more of this food, but like, yeah, throw in a cookie here and there, like some trail mix, because you know, Target has those like fall trail mixes, and those things are so fucking good. So you know, like I'm gonna have some of that. Like, yes, I like all those things too, but I genuinely just enjoy the food that I have. I just want more of it, and like I just can't wait to like not have to track it for a little bit. And like I'm gonna do somewhat. I have like a reverse plan ahead, but my calories are going to go up like that. Like I ain't wasting no time. Like I'm going to do a flush post prep and my calories will be right back up to like over 2000. And I'm really excited to try it out and see what that's going to look like. But I can attest to this too with like an example of a client that's not a prep client and the scarcity mindset of food, because I have a functional girl. She texted me this morning actually, and she was like, so we're on like low FODMAP, you know, because she's going through some gut issues and stuff like that. So like this is a time where we have to kind of restrict certain things. And she's like, I'm going on vacation next weekend. Like I'm just like so worried that I'm gonna like not know what to eat or what restaurants to go to. And I'm like, girl, I'm like, just chill. I'm like, we can get on a call. I'll help you out with this, like about how to pick things out. Like it's really not that hard. And now she's like, I just really want like all the sweets and stuff like that. And I'm like, you only want it because you can't technically have it right now because you're putting that in your mind that you can't have it. I was like, in the grand scheme of things, girl, like this is 3 months out of 20 something years of your whole life. Like now it's a big issue because you're focused on it. And that's why. So I had to explain that to her this morning, and she's eating plenty of food. She's eating over like 2,500 calories. Like, but it's because she's going through this functional phase. And like, yes, so right now we have to restrict certain things because that's just what we have to do. But once she's done, like, cool, we'll get through it. It'll be fine. But it's
and
just
I think that's like the hardest
portion.
part of like the functional clients. And I can attest to this because, you know, going through like that phase, honestly, it was more restrictive. And that's actually like, that was a cool accomplishment thinking about it, but like, it was more restrictive than even a prep is. And so for me, it was really hard. And thank God for semaglutide because that helped me a lot. But, you know, I think that the restriction, like I didn't even think about it that way either because I was craving a bunch of foods too that were not like that I wasn't able to have. And it was because of the restriction mindset. So I think even for clients, like with my coaching, like when clients feel so restricted, what I've done in the past, and even actually I just did this last week with one, she's in an off season too. And she's just like, she's upset that she's not following 100%. I'm like, girl, you're in off season. Like, I don't expect you to be 100%. I expect you to follow like the 80-20 rule, one, but two, like, why don't we just take a full week? I don't even want you to track, just eat eat intuitively, you know, eat what you're craving, what you want, but obviously within moderation, but keep it to the same meals. And then if you like, again, like if you want a cookie, have a cookie. If you want to go out to eat, go out to eat, you know? And I think that's helped her a lot. And a lot of times what I see with these clients is, again, they lose weight. So
yeah. And I want to make a really important point, I think. Sorry if I
go ahead.
But just because I know we're getting close to when you have to hop off, is I am by no means saying that we cannot make adjustments or follow plans to do what you want with your body. Obviously, I'm a competitor. I'm going to compete again one day and I'll have to go into a prep. Or someone that there's nothing wrong with wanting to lose body fat, wanting to gain muscle, wanting to manipulate food in a way that gets you to wherever it is you want to go. By all means, I'm a big believer. It's your life. Do whatever you want that brings you joy. All I'm saying is understand what's going on so that you can then be empowered to make the right decisions on the back end of those things. And when you understand what your body is doing, it makes it so much easier to handle all of that. So it's not you need to be more disciplined or you need to, just get out of your own head. It's like, no, this is what your body is supposed to do to protect you from starving. This isn't you having no discipline or anything like that. So when people understand the mechanisms that are going on, you can still choose to go through an intense diet phase or still choose to compete or whatever you want to do, but just know what's going on with your body at the same time so that you are not laden with all this guilt and shame about being hungry on the other side of it. And that's why do you think semaglutide is so damn popular? Everybody wants to look good and be free from the hunger. They're like, just make me not hungry. Like I've seen bikini pros be like, I'm just going to be on it year round to stay lean.
You're gonna
Because
lose a lot of muscle.
I know. I actually told Jason that at first, like when I first started taking, I'm like, oh my God, I want to stay on this forever. This is amazing. And he's like, Sam, he's like, you would lose muscle. So like that was like, now that I'm like low, like I'm pretty much done. But I'm like at that point where I'm like, no, like I don't need this. Like this is actually gonna make me stronger mentally. But it's again, it comes down to self-awareness and like knowing and having the knowledge. I mean, it comes down to that. So I think this podcast was really good.
And I was going to add on to that. It is the why behind the what. Like there's a reason for Amanda, there's a reason you're doing what you're doing, right? There's a reason Kayla's doing what she's doing with her gut health client right now. And having that why as to what's going on in your brain and inside of your body is so helpful. And thank God for the coaches that are right here sitting together today talking about this, because to anyone listening, if you're not with a coach that is telling you you're just not consistent and you're not disciplined enough, that is a red flag to me. And I'm not trying to bash anyone, but like you've really got to build that one-on-one relationship with somebody that you're coaching so that you understand what they need. Do they need, if they're in a really restrictive phase, do they need a diet break? Because that is a mechanism that a lot of people use and need, and it's okay. Or do they need 2 free meals every week? And, whatever it may be, but like, you really do need to get to know clients to understand that, but then also give them that knowledge, because it does make you feel a little bit better when you start having these weird feelings. Or Kayla, to your point, I'm like, I'm saving all these desserts and recipes and stuff. Like, why am I doing this? Have I gone mad? But you know why you're doing it. So I think that's really cool. Amanda, you're awesome. I really appreciate you talking us through your reverse and kind of strategy, because it's not like you're just doing it willy-nilly. Like you've been thoughtful about it as well. And about your feelings and how you feel, right? Like that's a big thing here as well. It's not just like our body composition. It's like,
I think this was really awesome, and it just gives like a lot of good insight into like listening and trusting yourself into making the right choices and not just being like, because you can, kind of thing. So I think, if a lot of people can benefit from this, and honestly, it's whatever approach is going to work best for you. Like we went through this whole podcast, you guys, like there was so many different ways you can do this, and there's not one right way of doing anything, honestly. So this was just a really cool insight into how Amanda was doing it. And if you guys have more questions, I guess I'll leave Amanda with like where people can contact you, get a hold of you or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, like if anyone's just struggling with this, like you can DM me. I have conversations about this literally all day, every day. And I think that it just goes to show how rampant it is. A lot of bikini or just anybody, competitors just don't talk about it because of the shame. And I guarantee you, even if they're not talking about it, they're going through it. There's maybe like a couple girls that just have great genetics and they're lean and not hungry, and yay for them. But for everybody else, I guarantee you they're going through it. And they're also trying to be an example, which is why they just they associate it with a weakness. It's not. So my Instagram is amandachristie.connell. And then that's really, I don't have like a YouTube or anything like that. I just have my Instagram. So anyone can, DM me anytime. And if they're just going through it, and we'll talk through it. That's a lot of what I do with a lot of my clients. So I'm here to help.
And I will link it in the show notes for everyone too for you. So thanks for joining us, Amanda. And then we will be back next week, you guys. Not next week, a couple weeks after my show, and then we will do a show recap, and we'll go from there. So hope you guys have an awesome week. See you later.